I got an amazing interview forwarded to me by a friend. And this interview is in a fairly well-known liberal blog site. And they did an interview with the one and only. They sat down for a serious conversation with spooky dude, George Soros, on what to do about the economic crisis. Now, I'm not sure why they listen to the same elites over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. I don't know why people do it. You know, it's like, is there a problem with the country and what's going on? Nope, 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 nope. And then when there's a problem, they'll say, oh yeah, we knew that problem all the time. They lie all the time. And we allow ourselves to continually go to the same sources of information who have been wrong over and over again. And then what those elites do is they throw more logs on the fire and they enslave us a little bit more each time because we're now getting farther and farther behind. The snowball is running, it's rolling towards us. When it was up at the top of the hill, you had time to prepare. Now it's about halfway down the hill. When do you stop saying, hey, is that a snowball coming? And stop listening to the idiot who's standing next to you going, nope, nope, not a snowball. When do we wake up? My guess is, historically speaking, is just as the shackles are clamped shut. This interview listened to George Soros, and they listened to his concerns intently, and they seemed genuinely sobered by this stunning new information that he was bringing to their attention. It's stunning stuff. It sounds scary. But before we look at the interview, I want you to keep in mind that there is an important reason to go through this exercise. Really important, and I'll explain in a minute. Hang with me here. I also want to point out that this is the same publication, exact same publication, that referred to my program on Fox as apocalyptic shtick, that it was becoming rancid. They said that I was a little boy who cried wolf. They said all of those things because of what I said was coming with the economy. Now, in this publication, in an interview with this publication and George Soros, they printed this week, when asked about our economic outlook, Soros said, quote, I'm not here to cheer you up. The situation is about as serious and as difficult as I've experienced in my career, which I think started in like 1820. He said, we're facing an extremely difficult time, comparable in many ways to the 1930s and the Great Depression. Wait a minute. George, did you say that? It's crazy, because that sounds vaguely familiar.
I understand what we're facing, and what we're facing is a very possible Great Depression. We're building the framework for an extraordinarily long and deep depression.
That's October 2008. What? And we all know that I've mentioned the 1930s a billion times, yet I don't recall hearing anything in this piece about Soros and his apocalyptic shtick. Maybe he walked it right back in the rest of the interview. Let's check. Quote, we are now facing, do we have it? We are now facing a general reentrenchment in the developed world, which threatens to put us in a decade of more stagnation. That's weird because that's what I just said in the last quote. Or worse, the best case scenario is a deflationary environment. The worst case scenario is the collapse of the financial system. George, hang on. Is that the right quote? Because that again sounds like maybe it should be in this box. Sounds like something else that somebody said.
Nobody's telling you the truth on the economy. And I told you that we had a very, very delicate financial system. And that nobody really knew the extent of the problem because everything has changed. The rules has changed. And I said, if we have any significant downward pressure on this whole thing could collapse. Well, I think you can see how delicate our financial system is and how close we came to collapse. And, you know, collapse may still happen. It may not. We may be past it. I don't think we are.
Little boy who cried wolf. But then there's the venerable elderly statesman who's coming up and saying, well, I'm just kind of the spooky dude here, and I got some things to say. I'm the wingnut. he's starting to get a little creepy, but there's more. He warns that the euro must survive because, quote, if you have a disorderly collapse in the euro, you'd have the danger of a revival of the political conflicts that have torn Europe apart over the centuries. Wait a minute, what? What was that? Huh? An extreme form of nationalism, like National Socialists, you're not talking about the Nazis, are you? Which manifests itself in xenophobia, the exclusion of foreigners and ethnic groups. In Hitler's time, can we get a bunch of rabbis together and write about how he's talking about Hitler? Because this is wrong. In Hitler's time, that focused on the Jews. Today, you have that with the Gypsies, the Roma, which is a small minority, and of course also the Muslim immigrants. But don't worry about the Jews, who are also being inflamed, have swastikas written all over everything in Europe and now in America. He doesn't bring that up. But I'm the one who hates the Jews, and I'm the one who is just needlessly bringing up the 1930s and Nazis. What? Excuse me? Euro collapse? Hitler? Geez, is he trying out for my job on GBTV or Fox News? Maybe he's plagiarizing me. I'm not sure. I told you this when I was at Fox. Quote, the old hatreds are starting to come back in Europe, and that's not who we are. And I'm sick of tired of being called a Nazi, because that's not the right in this country. The right in this country is small government. Nazism is National Socialist Workers Union. It's giant government. Giant government ends the same every single way, every time. It ends the same way. But what's coming in Europe? Nazis and communists. Let me ask you why. It's the same thing. See if the story sounds familiar. Well, wait a minute. That's exactly what George Soros is saying. Except, you know, that's in an entertaining sort of way. It's almost exactly what I've been warning about for the last few years. In fact, I believe several years. But he's not painted into the really crazy box, is he? Or violent box. Glenn Beck is calling for violence in the streets. No, I'm warning. I'm warning violence is coming here. He's not painted in that, because then you might have something. When asked if rising anger would make rioting in the streets inevitable, Soros replied to the publication, look at this, yes, yes, yes. Quoting from the magazine, he says, almost gleefully, well, of course. Soros continued, it will be an excuse for cracking down and using strong-arm tactics to maintain law and order, which carried to an extreme could bring about repressive political system, a society where the individual liberty is much more constrained, which we would break the nation of the United States. What kind of crazy conspiracy theory is this? What is he doing? Is he drinking? He's dangerous. I've explained this strategy to you many, many times. You know it like this.
But I think it is top-down, bottom-up, and inside-out, the strategy used by Czechoslovakia in the 1940s by the communists. And basically what they did is they had people in the upper part of the government, and they were part of the revolutionaries, the communist revolutionaries. And then those people worked with people down in the streets to cause trouble and strife and chaos and riot in the streets. And when those people started to riot in the streets, when those people started causing chaos and distrust of the government, that was part of it. Make sure you cause distrust of the government. The people, the regular schmoes, all looked to the government and said, you got to stop these people. Oh, and they did. They cracked down. But what they didn't know is that the people at the top were orchestrating the things at the bottom. And so when they clamped down, they had a communist government. Top down, bottom up, inside out. It is Czechoslovakia, 1946.
And George Soros knows that because he knows all about Czechoslovakia in 1946. Now, here's why I wanted you to hang through this annoying interview. Because the same people who discredited me are now hanging their hat on him. He knows what's coming because he's helping it come. He has spent the last year of his life and at least $1 million that he has claimed trying to discredit me as a whack job lunatic. That way you wouldn't be so concerned. That way you'd know that none of that stuff was going to happen, and you wouldn't prepare for what was ahead. He knew it all along because he's creating a global open society, a brand new system. He needs the time for you to stay asleep so he can redesign the financial sector. He needs to make sure that you know he's the good guy. He's warned you. Of course, then he hurt the guy, or tried to, that warned you of the exact same thing. That doesn't make sense, does it? He's hoping you'll remain asleep. He's hoping that you'll beg him for his help. And so are all of his buddies, all around this administration, all throughout government, not just this government, governments all over around the world, that will beg him for his advice because he's an elder statesman. As you beg him and beg your leader, please control it. And they'll use it, in his words, as an excuse.